Hi, this is Kristen from the City Savvy Show, and today is a first look at the consumer's perspective at how to invest. And today we have Mehul, who I've known for more than a decade, and I've known your wife Hetzel, and I've had the pleasure of selling real estate to Mehul and adding doors to Mehul. And now I know you've come from
India.
And what year was that?
In 99.
And then your wife came in
2004.
And then your whole when you decide to come from India, why Canada?
So I mean, certainly it was the choice of getting in more in Western education, and the educational system in Canada was quite reputable. And of course, one key consideration is affordability, and education was much more affordable here for the reputation and the quality of the system. So that was the main reason I came here. And then, of course, over time, stayed back, and here we are 20 years later.
Right. And where did you go to school?
University of Toronto.
Wow. And so you studied what?
I got a master's in economics from U of T. And then since then, I've had a few professional development and continuing education courses, but that's largely my background.
And so that's led you to do what nowadays?
So I work in the Ontario Public Service. Have been in the public service for over 20 years now. So pretty much my entire career has been in public service, and love the aspect of being in that sector, government and public service sector, and in the provincial government, which is also a very interesting place to work.
Right. And so back in 99, when you came to Canada, what were your goals and expectations?
Well, certainly coming in as a student, you want to first be able to, the short-term goal is always to finish your education and start establishing a career. I think over time, as we age and our mindset changes, then we start looking at the longer-term goals on not only establishing a career, but then establishing a lifestyle, and then extending that to not just a lifestyle for yourself, but a lifestyle for your family. So that's the progression of our goals, but certainly starting with getting a career in place was the key.
Right, right. And then your wife followed in 2004,
yep.
And she also is...
So yeah, she's also in the Ontario Public Service, and again, similar to me, she finished her graduate studies here, so that helps do the establishing our career first, and then that opens up opportunities for bigger and better things.
So this is not an interrogation, I promise you, but it's kind of a way to establish, the groundwork to investing. And we always sit here as real estate professionals. We know the ins and outs of investing, but the reason why we wanted to lay the groundwork with Mehul was to say, okay, well, here is a regular person, not in real estate, who has invested in real estate and who has grown through real estate your generational wealth. Yep. And it's been an impressive journey. I met you at an open house, I believe, in Willowdale, and you at that time owned a house in the Beaches, or Main Street, yep. Upper Beaches area, Main Street and Danforth area, and then through that, eventually, you almost close to the Henry Farm area now own a home, which has, the value has exploded. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us, from your perspective, how you've now invested? What was the process? Did you actually take a mortgage out? Did you expand? What did you do with your own home that you own now to now go ahead and invest in other real estate?
So yeah, certainly we built, I guess, the home equity in our home, that we then leveraged to expand the investments. And it took a while to build that equity, but I think also in addition to building the equity, what helped, and at least our choices, was having good people to give us good advice. And that was critical to us being able to take everything is a risk, but for us to be able to take a risk to expand and our investment portfolio.
So tell us then, what were your first steps in investing? Like, okay, so you bought your house, you bought your first house, Main and Danforth, then you bought your second house, where you are now. What were your first steps in investing?
So I think in our case, we weren't too familiar with investments in real estate. I mean, certainly having been in the country for 10, 12 years, the goal is usually just to settle in and to find a way to settle into to the environment. So the notion of investments and expanding into investing directly into real estate as opposed to indirect vehicles like stocks and other vehicles, we looked at doing a little bit of research on by ourselves, but also then looking at people who give us advice, including obviously from your firm and from you, that then got us a bit more comfortable over time. It wasn't something where we realized on day number one that we're ready to invest. It was a process. It took us a while to get comfortable, but the process, I think, certainly was influenced and aided by talking to people and getting advice.
Did you have any apprehension, with the way the market is today, did you have any apprehension with investing in today's market with the temperature that it's at?
Yeah. Well, I think any investment certainly carries a risk, but I think in our case, our horizon is long term. So we didn't have to worry about, and we didn't have constraints to begin with, and we didn't have to worry about short term gains. So we focused on the long term, and certainly having been living here, seeing the experience in the real estate market also helped create that long-term outlook and get comfortable with taking the long-term position and not worrying about the short-term risk.
So how many doors do you own today, total?
2 plus our primary residence.
Right, so 3 doors total. And what were some of the things that you looked for in those investments? Because you chose new development? Well, I know the answer to this because I helped you with it. But there was new development versus resale. Was there one that made more sense to you versus the other?
I think I would say in our case, we weren't, particularly because we were investing for long-term horizon, we didn't have any preferences ourselves. I mean, that's where we then looked at getting advice and weighing the different options.
Right.
Certainly, as an investor, for me, in the world of economics and finance, you want to be able to get something that is sustainable. Right. And that was our key criteria in deciding where to go and how to proceed, was looking at options that would be more sustainable, both financially for us, as well as the long-term prospects of growth. And so we ended up with all our investments within the city, because there's certainly the prospects here seem to be more as good, if not better, than many other parts of the market elsewhere.
Right. And so you stuck with the 416. You stayed in the city. You bought resale, and was there an emotional part of you when you looked at different units? Was there an emotional side of what you were looking for? Was it kind of what you would want to see as a tenant versus an owner, or a combination of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. Certainly, especially the first time around, like when you walk in, like there are instances when you visit the same property multiple times, right? Multiple showings just to get comfortable with. Typically the first time around, and especially when you open the door for the first time, the first thought that goes to your mind is, how would I live in this space? Like, what would I do if I had to live in this space? So that's inevitably, it's hard to avoid, but it is something that you get started with. And then over the course of that visit and over time, you start detaching yourself from the property and looking at, how will I be able to sustain this? And is this something that I can easily market for someone else to rent and live? But yeah, there is a little bit of that emotional part attachment to it, the first instance. And even after, like the same thing, whether it's the first property or the second one, you still go through the same trials and tribulations.
Absolutely. And I think that's important. I think today, if you just look at an investment as a box and just buy something off of floor plans, which is great, we can do, but when you actually see something for real, it's tangible, you can see yourself living there, then that makes it easier for you to make that purchase, because this is, I can live here. I remember making a comment. We were looking on we were standing on a balcony. We looked over at one of your other investments, and you said, well, Hetal can live over there and I can live over here, and that would be great. And the kids, we could trade kids every once in a while, and it was kind of a funny moment. But it's a real moment because buying is emotional, and it's a scary thing. Were you nervous at all through the process?
I think this is where, again, like having and good people to talk to and good advisors, both, real estate side, even from the banking, because it is a heavy transaction cost. So having that advice and doing a little bit of the legwork to have those conversations ahead of time reduces the anxiety. There's always going to be an anxiety because it is a significant purchase, but to reduce the anxiety, and particularly, I think in instances where some of these decisions have to be made in a matter of a few minutes or an hour or two. It's not something where I go into a grocery store or look at a tomato and I can think about it for another 2-3 hours or come back the next day.
Right.
This is something where, particularly in this day and age, the market is so fast that you have to be very quick. So being well prepared helps.
Right. And that was the importance of having, so the way you structured it is you had your money put aside, from the restructuring, and it was ready to go. So you had your deposit ready to go. You knew that we didn't have to worry about financing, so there was no conditions on that. And in the two cases, within 4 months of each other, we had the status certificate, so we knew what the financials were. So that was probably your winning point on both times that you went in, because we got it right away. First one, we got it right away. Second one, it was done because you were prepared as a consumer, as an investor. You knew what you needed to do, and you were willing to take the advice of a professional to make that step. And I think that's really, really, really important, is to have faith in whoever you trust and whoever you do business with, is to have that faith to say, okay, we're going to just go for it, and we get it done the first time, so that you're not waiting 6 months for the market to continue to rise and rise and rise, and prices to go up, and it costs you so much more to buy the next unit. So now, my next question is, where do you see your future in investing in real estate? Will you go from, here now I have my portfolio in real estate, and if you watched my last podcast, we talked about RSPs, which is, we talked about Greybrook and how they are heavily invested in real estate, and that's another great way of investing. Have you thought of other ways, or will you continue just to buy more real estate as time goes on?
Well, I think, again, this is investment is a complicated set of choices that you have to be open to all choices. So I certainly would not rule out any particular vehicle right now, or even at any point in time. So I would still look at the options on direct investment into real estate or indirect through stocks or some other vehicle. It is one of those things where some of that choice will be making the choice or making the decision will be based on market conditions at the time when we're ready. Right. So it's hard to predict what the market conditions are, and therefore it's hard to rule out the choices ahead of time. So always have to have that open mind.
So that was going to be one of my questions, is where do you see the real estate market going in, let's say, the GTA in particular, in 2022 and beyond? What are, you've been here since '99. You've seen what the market was. You saw what you paid for Main Street. You saw what you paid for your now house. Where do you see the future?
Well, certainly the density and the expansion in the area, and particularly the economic development, is going to fuel both the real estate and the economic growth on a regular basis. I think certainly the advantage of being in a region like this that has already had a good infrastructure built up, whether it's transit system, all the other supports that businesses and families need, will certainly help fuel the growth, even if the modest case is the typical growth that we've experienced, we'll continue to experience, or possibly a further expansion with all the different factors around immigration and whatnot that can add to the growth in a region like this. So I would suspect probably the starting point very well might be, the next 20 years might be similar to the past 20, where what we've experienced, we're likely to experience in the future. There'll always be some fluctuations here and there, but long-term horizon, I would suspect the next 20 years is probably not too different than the past 20.
And that's usually a perspective that we don't hear from consumers. We normally hear, when is the bubble going to kind of come to an end and explode, and the market's just going to, flatten out or go down, because there's lots of peaks and rises, and you want to see peaks and rises. You don't want to just see the market skyrocket, right? We're not the space shuttle or a rocket ship, and so it's nice to see, the perspective from you to say, okay, well, I know this is a long-term thing because, you saw over 20 years how much the market has expanded, and you can see how people want to come to the GTA. So you've had that, you have that sight, that foresight to understand that we know that Toronto and the surrounding area is just this rich, it's like this farmland that's rich soil, and it's growing, and it's going to continue growing because people want to live in a city like Toronto. So to have somebody like Mehul, who I've known for a long time, understand that and then take the risk, and if it's calculated risk, and take money out of a property that has kind of grown exponentially, I would say, triple in value, to be very, very conservative, and then take a little bit of that out to expand. His wealth is very impressive, and I find that amazing. And so, if you were to give somebody else out there that's watching this any kind of advice, what would that be?
As you mentioned, we want to make sure that it's a calculated risk. Everything will be a risk, but want to make sure it's a calculated one. It's something that you have some ability to influence the outcome in the long term. But yes, long-term horizon is certainly important to keep in mind, and have to be able to withstand the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs that will inevitably come into the market. So even in the last 20 years, we've had ups and downs. The late 2000s, there were a lot of significant changes in the market across many countries, not just here. So that, I think, long-term horizon, calculated risk, certainly being well prepared, I think is a key, particularly in an environment like today where the turnaround time for transactions are very short. When we bought our first house, put a bid, 4 hours, 5 hours later, you get a call that, you may need to put in a second offer because you made it through the first pass. Whereas this time around, the recent experience, within 30 minutes, right, you have to make a choice, right? So the horizon has shrunk quite a bit, and that is where being prepared helps quite a bit, because the other thing I can probably foresee is I don't think we'll be going back to the days where we'll have 2-3 days to make a choice.
Right.
You'll still have to make the choices in the short period of time,
right,
and preparation is important.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was reading an article today about communal housing where people in BC are now, you get 3 families buying one property, and now even in Toronto, they're talking about laneway zoning, where you can take the back part of your house or lot and you can build another property like Vancouver and have a residential home where another family can actually live, because there is such a shortage of space, right? So this is the remarkable part about housing, is that we all need it. And so that's where it makes a lot of sense to invest in real estate. But sometimes it's nice for me not to tell you, because sometimes you're just thinking I'm telling you so that I can make a commission. Well, no, we're really not here for us. We're here for you out there. And that's why I wanted a different perspective, not from a real estate professional, not from a banker, not from a lawyer, but I wanted a real person. Well, we're all real people, but I wanted somebody that has taken that step to actually show you that this is really, really possible for everyone. Whether you own or you don't own, but especially if you own a piece of real estate that you've owned for at least 4 years. It's gone up since 19, how old am I now? Since 2018 to 2022, I think we're up about 51% to 55% in the 416, and if I'm not mistaken, we're up a little bit more in the GTA, which is amazing. And if you look at a semi we see a little bit of room in even Brampton, the growth of semis. It's unbelievable. And yes, do we see this going up all the way to the sky? No, it's going to level out eventually as more inventory comes out, which it's going to, because everybody's saying, okay, it's time for me to move to Elliott Lake. Retirement, that's not a plug for Elliott Lake, by the way. But it's time for me to go move to a retirement community and cash in. So that will happen, which will, flatten out the market a little bit. But I really am happy that you actually took the time to come out here today to show people that this is very possible and not saying that you're average, but for us, we're all average. We're not all Warren Buffett. We're all not Bill Gates. We are just people working, and we can do it. Even, Laura, our executive producer here, she's gone out and invested. We've invested in the same place. JCL, my business partner, has invested, and we're all in this together. And I think it's important for you to start reconsidering what you're doing with your equity. Should you be taking your equity out to make a pool or a hot tub or to renovate your kitchen? Sure. But should you be building more wealth by taking it out and buying more doors? And the answer is yes. I think you would agree yes is it. Because guess what's going to happen in 10 years? Once that condo or that other house that you buy, that will increase in value, and you'll be able to take equity out of it, not your principal residence. Now you can pay off that debt there and then buy more property in the future. And that's how we build wealth. So I really want you to consider reaching out to us and really having a deep conversation with us, because we can help you like we've helped Mehul and Hetal and your children and your dog, okay, grow. Because this is what it's about. It's about growing your personal wealth. And we're here to help you do that. And I want to thank you, Mehul, for joining us. This has been another episode of the City Savvy Show. Thank you so much for watching. We look forward to the next time.